Okay, so let's talk about Hangarback Walker. Now, I'm not big on Standard. I've never been big on Standard, and I don't think I ever will be. But I think this guy is the most overpowered card in Standard right now. Not in the sense that he's too powerful for the format, but just the fact that this, I think, is the strongest card right now, and I think every deck, pretty much, should play it. MTG Goldfish ranks this as the 7th best card in the format, which I disagree with, because I've already said I think it's the best. I would equate this guy to a baby Wormcoil engine, or something similar to Solemn Simulacrum, where you can play it as a 6 mana, 6/6 or whatever, and it generates massive amounts of value. Now this guy isn't quite a 6 mana, 6/6, he's a 6 mana, 3/3 if you play him, but when he dies he explodes into 1/1 flyers that make up the rest of the 6. So he doesn't generate as much value, but stuff in Standard will never be as good as the equivalent stuff in Modern, and the same thing as Solemn Simulacrum. It's a 4 mana 2/2, which it actually is, and instead of, say, draw a card, get a land, you get 2/1/1 Flying Thopters that have evasion and get through the damage. This guy is an extremely flexible card, not in the sense that you can bend him, you can do that if you want, but that's your funeral. You can cast him at any time in the game, no matter whether it's on turn 2 as a 1/1, and then you can start upgrading him, or on turn 10 when you have 8 lands, you can play him as a 4/4. He will never be bad at any point in the game, you can always cast him if you want. He's flexible in the sense that you don't have to have any specific colours to play him or upgrade him. You can put him in any deck you want, no matter what colour it is, or how many colours it has. He will never inconvenience you. He will never be left stranded in your hand in a 3-colour deck because you don't have double black, for example. He's flexible because he goes into any archetype whatsoever. Maybe not combo, but he can go into it. In aggro, play him as a 2 mana 1/1 or a 4 mana 2/2, that when it dies, doesn't actually die and turns into stuff with evasion that you can push through for damage. And not just that, but in aggro, as a 2 mana 1/1, your opponent plays a 3/3. You can't get through that. Or they play a 0/3 vine wall thing. You can't get through it. So you just sit there upgrading this card and saying, if you don't have a way to exile this, eventually he's going to be so big that you can't handle him, and he's going to swing through that wall, you're going to have to block with the wall, and then even if you do kill him, if you can't exile him, he splits into a shit ton of stuff with evasion. In mid-range, it's the exact same situation, except mid-range decks I think he fits into a little bit better, especially if you can start throwing in some sacrifice synergy, because this card is absolutely nuts with sacrifice. And in a control deck, like how I use him, you can just play him as a cheap card that creates space for you to get to the late game. If you throw this down as a 2 mana 1/1, your opponent feels like they have to get rid of it. Your opponent feels like they might have to spend an entire turn just to exile it. Or your opponent might think, well, I can't handle it right now, but he makes it harder for me to swing into him. If this is a 2 mana 1/1 on turn 2, on turn 3, you don't have to play any cards. You can see what your opponent does, especially if they go first and they've now got 4 mana. You can then choose to play a 3 mana counterspell, or you can choose to block and upgrade this, or just upgrade this, and then play something else like an Anticipate to set up further turns. He gives you a lot of options, he gives you a lot of decisions to be made, and he gives you a lot of ways to win the game, and he doesn't give you many ways to lose it. He's extremely strong because even if you've got nothing to do with your time or mana, this guy keeps getting bigger, and that's very concerning if your opponent doesn't have an answer to it. His strongest thing, in my opinion, is the fact he can upgrade at instant speed. This means if you play him as a 1/1 or 2/2, he's not going to do that much damage if you start swinging with him. So you can just sit there upgrading him and using him as a defensive wall, that if they swing with a 4/4 and he's a 3/3, block, tap, upgrade, 1 mana, they both trade and he explodes into 1/1 flyers. Now, he would be a bad card like Chronicon or whatever. Chromaticon? I'm trying to think of the card. I'll put it in the description or whatever if I remember what it's called, but the fact that he can grow whenever you want him to, and he splits into flyers, the and he splits into flyers is the strongest part of him. He's also resilient. People don't want to kill him because it doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't help you. He explodes into flyers, so if he's a 4/4 and they kill him, he's now 4 1/1s that fly. That's more annoying to deal with than if he was just a 4/4, because you can chump block a 4/4, especially if you start applying bigger numbers to it. He's easier to handle when he's on his own, but as long as he's on his own, he can just upgrade and become more annoying when he dies. He's resilient because he's a colourless creature. Your opponent can't cast something like Ultimate Price, which is a very common removal spell, at least what I know of. He doesn't die to it. You yourself, like I do, in a control deck can play Eugen and use it to wipe the field and this guy lives. That's fantastic. Although this card isn't without weaknesses, like every card, if your opponent say... Well, apart from Loxodon Smite, if your opponent turn 1 plays Despise, looks at your hand and says, Hangarback Walker is a load of shit, my deck doesn't run exile effects, get rid of it. They can do that. They can run 4 Despise, get rid of all of these, and you can't stop that because unless you cast it, and you can't cast it until turn 2 at least. As well as this, counterspells, like pretty much any card, again, unlike Loxodon Smiter because he's special and an elephant, you can just counter it. If you play that 3 mana counterspell with Awaken, whatever that is, it's really strong, you can just get rid of this guy no matter how much mana they put into it. And those two are the best way to get rid of it, I think, because exiling it doesn't necessarily work. If you see this guy as a 3-3 and you cast Abzan Charm, they can find a way to sacrifice this before the Abzan Charm resolves, and if they find a way to sacrifice it before the Abzan Charm resolves, you would then have to exile it using another card, and then you start throwing multiple cards on top of each other just to get rid of this guy, and this guy was their 2-drop. Like, that's very annoying to deal with. Some of the sacrifice effects you can see, like if they have Evolutionary Leap on the field, you can see that they can sacrifice this whenever they want. But that's still not good for you. Just because you can see it and you don't get played into the Fool doesn't mean it doesn't affect you badly, because they can just keep upgrading it with unwarranted abandon. Like, they don't care if you try and kill it, they'll just sacrifice it. And they don't care if you throw another kill spell on top, because they'll just sacrifice it again. As long as you don't tap out fully, which you never will because you need the 1 mana to upgrade him, he will always be fine. Although, he does have a converted mana cost of 0, which means Silk Wrap is almost perfect to get rid of him, because you exile something with a mana cost 3 or less, and then even if I find a way to kill the enchantment dies, this guy comes back, but the 1/1 counters that were on him have disappeared, and I'm pretty sure he dies because he's a 0/0 before you get the option to upgrade him again. I think that's how that's how it works. If it's not, tell me, because I'll be misunderstanding that for ages. If you are a new player thinking of getting into Standard, or maybe another format, this is your bet. It was printed in an event deck fairly recently, which means it has an upper limit on what its price can be, and as soon as it rotates out of Standard, it'll tank in price by about half, which is okay on Standard. This is why I don't like Standard, the prices just disappear. But it's played in Standard a lot, so it's going to hold its value for now at least. You can get it quite easily because it was in an event deck. You can just buy it as a single. You can buy 1 or 2 of the event decks and buy the other 2 of these, or you can trade into them or whatever. But if you get yourself 4 copies of these, you can put them in any Standard deck you build and it'll never be bad. Like, you could play it in some sort of combo artifact Thopter Network Shrapnel Blast deck, and this would be completely fine in it. It'd synergize perfectly well. You could play it in a 1/1 counter based Outlast deck, and again, this guy is great in it. You could play him in blue-black control like I do, just to space create, and it's fine. But the best bit about this, if you buy it to play it in Standard, if you get a good run out of it in Standard and you use it a lot, he's still good in Modern. He's played in Affinity, Mono Blue Tron, even sometimes Jund and Junk because they like the value of him. He's played in Legacy a little bit, most of the time in Mud and that kind of beatdown deck, but he does see play in other Legacy decks. Personally, I like him in Stoneblade or Deathblade, the sword-based decks, because you play him, and your opponent might just path to exile him or whatever, well, not path, they'd use swords because that's strictly better, but they might swords to plowshares him, and that's okay because that means they can't swords to plowshare something else that you play that's valuable, like a Deathrat Shaman. But if they don't have a way to kill him and they have to, say, abrupt decay him or whatever, he splits into dudes with evasion, and then you can put the swords on the dudes with evasion, and that's really strong. He's even played in Vintage a little bit, although Vintage won't help your pricing very much, or mostly affect the foils, but he's played in Workshop-based artifact decks, despite the fact that they also play Chalice of the Void, which counters him, because you just want him that much. So there's 10 minutes of me talking about Hangarback Walker. Thank you guys for watching, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!